Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. How are you? Thanks for being here. Hope you had a great weekend. It is officially 180 degrees, hot as Hades here in the studio in San Diego. So if I'm sweating my brains out, that's why. I want to start off here. This is Joe Biden talking with Hillary Clinton for some reason. Here it is.
We need to ensure that women have access to all health services during this crisis. Abortion is an essential health care service. It's being used as a political wedge right now, and it shouldn't be. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the American Medical Association agree that it shouldn't be categorized as a procedure that can be delayed.
I want to talk about how men got women to support abortion. How did that happen? How did men convince women? Feminists never supported abortion. Women, it's against every maternal instinct possible. The feminist movement didn't support it. The feminist movement was over here, and the sexual revolution was over here. They were two totally different things, but they came together on abortion. How? That's what I want to talk about here. So again, just to drive this point home, abortion was always a man's thing. Women wanted to keep their kids. Men wanted to have sex without consequences. It was men who wanted abortion. Two guys in particular, and I think we talked about these guys maybe on Thursday's show. Lawrence Slater, who's known as the father of abortion rights, went to Harvard, 1941, founding chair of NARAL, which is the National Abortion Rights Action League. And then so it's him, and then Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And he was one of the largest, he ran one of the largest abortion centers in the country at the time. He was the other co-founder of NARAL, right? So you got these two guys. Dr. Nathanson, when he saw his first ultrasound, he turned and became a pro-life advocate for the rest of his life, right? So these guys were the founders of NARAL. Later, in particular, was a sexual revolution extremist. He wasn't a feminist. He was a sexual revolution guy. He was over here. But he knew he had to recruit feminists to be in favor of abortion in order to get women to fall for it. And it turns out he was friends with Betty Friedan, author of Feminine Mystique. Maybe we can talk about her another day too, but she was against abortion. She was a feminist. She was her book sparked the second wave of feminism. First wave of feminism was like Susan B. Anthony and Katie Stanton, like in the 20s, women right to vote. Second wave was Betty Friedan, right? Feminine Mystique. She was against abortion. She was a mother herself. And the Feminine Mystique, the book never mentions abortion or contraception. So what convinced the feminists to join and sign on with the sexual revolution people? Work. And in order to do that, women needed to get abortions. Let me quote here from Sue Ellen Browder. She wrote this book called Sex and the Catholic Feminist. It's fantastic. It's short. It's a quick read. It is so good. She said, it's the same reason it once made sense to me and to other women of my boomer generation. She used to be a feminist and pro-abortion. This was a long time ago when women were still being fired for getting pregnant. Corporate America did not want to hire a woman, train her, put her in a position of authority, and pay her a high salary, only to have her quit in 2 years and go home to raise babies. So if you could say, it's okay, boys, she'll be on the pill. And if the pill fails, she'll get an abortion. Then equal pay for equal work may suddenly have seemed more palatable to male business leaders and to Congress, right? Makes sense? See that connection there? So feminists wanted to work, but they were getting fired for being pregnant. So the sexual revolution people came in and said, oh, we got a solution for that. Just be in favor of abortion, and then you won't have to worry about that pesky being pregnant thing. Helen Gurley Brown, she was the editor-in-chief of Cosmo for, I think, over 30 years, starting in the 70s. She believed, like a good Marxist, that all women should get their value from working. Again, that's a lie for men, and it's a lie for women. You should not get your value from your reason for living is not your job, right? But she believed it was, and so did Betty Friedan. And they wanted women to work 24/7, 365, become a workaholic, take the pill, and then when the pill fails, you get an abortion. Then you'll be successful, because then you too can climb the corporate ladder. And you too, women, you now can be just like a man. You won't have the family getting in the way of you climbing the corporate ladder. And that's true equality, they said. So these men, they convinced Betty Friedan that the only way to get equality in the workplace was to legalize abortion. So November 18th, 1967, in the Chinese room of Washington, D.C.'s Mayflower Hotel. There were 1,000 members of NOW, the National Organization for Women, which Betty Friedan was the leader of. There were 1,000 women, but only 105 showed up to vote on the Bill of Women's Rights. There were 8 issues, like maternity leave, women's right to like no discrimination in college. The government's going to deduct child care expenses, stuff like that. All very reasonable stuff, and they all passed unanimously, no problem. But then abortion was snuck in there right at the end. And there was a big fight over it. It went way past midnight. And in the end, out of the 105 women there, 57 voted for it. Only 57. It was like 54% of the vote or something like that. 1/3 of the members of NOW who were there, 1/3 of them quit on the spot. So think about this. These were hardcore 60s feminists. All right, these are the women who in the 60s were so hardcore, they're like, I'm joining the National Organization for Women. I'm going to DC to vote on the Women's Bill of Rights. And 1/3 of them were so outraged and appalled that abortion was put on and voted on by NOW and put in the Women's Bill of Rights that they quit right there on the spot. This is far from unanimous. But Friedan, a journalist herself, a journalist who got pregnant and got fired, right? So like there's the bitterness and the connection, right? She knew how to make a story. So she had a press conference the next day and she said, 28 million American working women, the millions of women emerging from our colleges each year who are intent on full participation in the mainstream of our society work, and mothers who are emerging from their homes to go back to school and work. We all agree now. We all agree that abortion is a human right or a women's right and all that stuff. 57 women are now speaking for 28 million women. Amazing. Right? And then the next day, the Washington Post, now National Organization for Women, supports the furthering of the sexual revolution of our country. Boom, now they're combined. Sexual revolution, feminist, now they're one. There you have it. So now, if you're a woman, you must support abortion for women's rights. It's essential now, as Joe Biden would say. I bring all this up listen. Women, I'll be blunt. Women, if you're for abortion, you've been played. You've been played by misogynistic men who want to have sex with women without consequences. You can dress it up today any way you want, but you've been tricked and you've been played. This is Dr. Nathanson. He, again, I think he was responsible for 75,000 abortions himself. He was the abortion doctor and ran the largest abortion clinic in the center. He said, we persuaded the media, and then he turned, right? He said, we persuaded the media that the cause of permissive abortions was a liberal, enlightened, sophisticated one. Knowing that if a true poll were taken, we would be soundly defeated, we simply fabricated the results of fictional polls. We announced to the media that we'd taken polls and that 60% of Americans were in favor of permissive abortions. This is the tactic of the self-fulfilling lie, because few people care to be in the minority. So just so you know, I don't make any religious arguments about abortion. I can, obviously, but me quoting scripture or biblical truth to someone who isn't a Christian, like, you might as well be quoting the Quran to me. Right? It's got no authority at all. So I don't, and I can't expect non-Christians to have Christian standards of life. So I don't make any Christian arguments or secular or biblical arguments against abortion. I make only secular arguments for life, which are as rock solid as any argument could be made for anything. That being said, for Christian, like especially for Christians, you can't be a Christian and be pro-choice, pro-abortion. You can't. You just can't. I know you're not. And listen, you can be a Christian and be for higher taxes. You can be a Christian and vote and like want different foreign policies than other. Like obviously, right? That's all within the range of reasonable difference of opinions and whatever, right? You cannot be a Christian and vote for abortion or support abortion or, dare I say, vote for people who then support abortion. Can't happen. This is not tax policy. And if you support abortion because you had one or you were a part of one in the past and you feel bad, so to justify that guilt, you support abortion today, or because you don't want to be a hypocrite, right? You don't want to be a hypocrite and like be against it now, even though you had one in the past, right? So that's why you're trying to stay silent or you're for, right? Just admit it, right? Admit what happened in your past and use your testimony, use your story to inspire other people to not get abortions. Use that guilt or whatever emotion you have inside of you as motivation to help pro-life pregnancy centers so that other people don't make the same decision you made and then live the rest of that, your life, or their life, with the same guilt and emotions that you've had for your entire life. Be a part of the solution. Channel that into something good. You cannot be a Christian and vote for abortion. I know you're not supposed to make declarative statements like that, but like, make the argument you can, right? It's possible. Get that one right, all right? And to all the people, all the woke people who are sure that they'd be abolitionists against slavery if they were born in the 1800s, right? Without a doubt, if I were alive in the 1800s in the South, I'd be a rabid abolitionist. You think so? Or why are you pro-abortion now? True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, if you've learned nothing yet about this show, we are so good at beating a dead horse. We take the horse and that's dead, and we just beat it, and we will not shut up about a thing over and over and over again. And we're gonna keep doing that here. I wanna play this clip here of Dr. Guttmacher. He was an OBGYN. 1962, he became the president of Planned Parenthood. And he was also the vice president of the American Eugenics Society. I want to do more research on the American Eugenics Society. Like, when did they break up? Like, at what point was the American Eugenics Society like, you know what, guys? This is one of the most evil things, actually, humanity's ever done. So I think we should stop meeting. I think this is the end of, but it's been real. It's been a fun couple decades, guys. So these eugenicists, no different than the Nazis, right? They did not want inferior people to exist. Black people were included in that, but also poor people, disabled people, not very bright people. And these, there were two things that motivated eugenicists for the most part. There was that, right? Like, I don't want any more black people in the world, or I don't want any more poor people in the world. And there's also this worry about population control. This was big in the 60s. Our environmental movement today is based a lot on this belief as well, that there's too many people on the planet. And we've talked at least on the radio show, we've talked a lot about Paul Ehrlich. He wrote this book called Population Bomb in 1968. He was on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show 28 times or something like that. He was like the Bill Nye of the 60s. So he would just push this, like, we're all gonna die. Here's just a couple things. Hundreds of millions would starve to death in the 1970s. 65 million Americans would starve to death. Crowded India was doomed. The odds were fair that, quote, England will not exist in the year 2000. In 1970, he said, sometime in the next 15 years, the end will come. And the end is an utter breakdown of the capacity of the planet to support humanity. Guys, there's like a genuine belief that there's too many people on the planet. So therefore, we need to limit them with eugenics, and abortion. So this is Dr. Guttmacher, interviewed here by a priest, for some reason, in 1968. Here it is. Oh, I should say, sorry, real quick, guys. Sorry. The question is, from the priest, we're aware that throughout the world, there's a population crisis. Okay, so there's like, it's sad, like that we're assuming that's like, we all know there's a population crisis. Therefore, how does Planned Parenthood fit in the plan to correct that? And here's what he said.
Everyone is conscious of the fact that in some areas of the world there is an explosive type of population increase, unsupportable in that it is outdistancing food, it retards economic development, it makes education impossible for the total numbers. And what we are attempting to do, of course, is to encourage countries to curtail the rate of growth. Now, I've been in this a very long time, and I am encouraged because we have governments becoming deeply involved each year. One or more, or many governments make population control part of national policy.
So the population of the planet in 1968 was 3.5 billion, and I think it's 7 today, so it's literally double. There's no population issue. But back then, there was a perhaps genuine belief, we need to curtail the rate of growth. So to do that, what do? Kill babies. He's the one who came up with the, he did a couple. So Dr. Nathanson, who we talked about in the last segment, he's the one who came up with you personally can be against abortion, but we should leave it up to a choice between a woman and her doctor. Right? He was the guy who came up with that rhetoric. Dr. Gumacher, he came up with, just the term reproductive rights. He was that thing. And he was the guy who popularized the use of the term fetus in this conversation. Right? In 1947, he wrote a book. He's an OBGYN, right? So he wrote a book called Having a Baby, and he talked about fertilization. He said, the new baby, which is created at this exact moment of fertilization, at the exact moment when a new life is initiated, a great deal is determined, which is forever irrevocable. Its sex, coloring, body build, blood group, and in large measure, its mental capacity and emotional stability. All right, so it was 1947. He wrote about a baby conceived, fertilization, this moment, blood type, even personality to an extent, at this moment. That's what he wrote in 1947. Even in 1961, he said fertilization is, quote, that time when a baby has been conceived. It was 1961. 1968, when he was the president of Planned Parenthood, right when that clip was taken. He wrote this in the Rutgers Law Review. He said, my feeling is that the fetus, particularly during its intrauterine life, is merely a group of specialized cells that do not differ materially from other cells. So you can see even he changed his language from, oh yeah, it's a baby, conceived right of fertilization, everyone knows, to, oh, well, it's a fetus. It's really no different than other, clump of cells anywhere else. It's not a human, certainly it's not a baby. It's like a wart. It's like having a wart removed is all just, right? So he was the guy who did that. We got it, are we good? All right, so again, it's something that the feminists were against, and now it's like all strong, intelligent women, absolutely, and have always wanted abortion so that they can be truly liberated. It's not how it was. They had to be tricked. Women had to be tricked. Andrea Dworkin. Now, before you show the picture, but that's fine. I was going to say, imagine as far left of a 60s feminist as you possibly can. And then boom, Andrea Dworkin is who you get, all right? She wrote this book. I forget what it was called. Right-Wing Women, maybe? That's the name of the book. So this is, we got a minute? Yeah, we got Gordon Chang here in a second. Let me read the most of this. Okay, she's writing about abortion. Okay, so far left, show her again, okay? This woman, this is who's talking here. In the garden of earthly delights, known as the 60s counterculture, pregnancy did intrude, all right? So it's like, oh, sexual revolution, everything's great, free love, blah, blah. Pregnancy intruded, almost always rudely. And even then and there, it was one of those real obstacles to female blanking on male demand. That would be the F word. It even led women to say no. Pregnancy did. Throughout the 60s, the birth control pill was not easy to get, and nothing else was for sure. Fear of pregnancy provided a reason for saying no. Not just an excuse, but a concrete reason, not easily seduced or persuaded away, even by the most astute or dazzling arguments in behalf of sexual freedom. Especially difficult to sway were the women who had had illegal abortions already. Whatever they thought about blanking, however they experienced, however much they loved or tolerated it, they knew that for them it had consequences in blood and pain. And they knew that it cost the men nothing, except sometimes money. Pregnancy, in fact, was anti-aphrodisiastical. It was the anti-aphrodisiac. Pregnancy, the burden of it, made it harder for the flower boys to blank the flower girls, who did not want to have to claw out their own insides or pay someone else to do it. They also did not want to die. It was the break that pregnancy put on blanking that made abortion a high priority political issue for men in the 60s. Not only for young men, but also for the older leftist men who were skimming sex off the top of the counterculture, and even for more traditional men who dipped into the pool of hippie girls now and then. The decriminalization of abortion, for that was the political goal, was seen as the final fillip, just like the last little flick, like the last step. It would make women absolutely accessible, absolutely free. All right, guys, here's the quote. The sexual revolution, in order to work, required that abortion be available to women on demand. If it were not, blanking would not be available to men on demand. Pretty amazing that this went from a man's demand to a woman's right. A woman's crusade, an issue that all women must be pro-abortion. And even now, people in the church are still pressured to say they're pro-choice. Well, I'm not for it personally, but who am I to say whether it's right or wrong? That's your truth, blah, blah, blah. Good night, are you kidding me? Men now can't even have an opinion on it anymore. All right, I gotta go. We'll stop here. I was gonna make a thing about Cardi B. I read some article about Cardi B the other day, and how she is like she's the powerhouse of female sexuality and independence and dominance in a male-dominated genre, and she's so liberated. It's like, give me a break, right? More doing the bidding for misogynistic men and calling it liberation. That's hoodwinked all the way to the abortion clinic. Dr. Gordon Chang, coming up next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, always good to talk to Gordon Chang, Gordon G. Chang on Twitter. Please follow him there. And he's the author of the book, The Coming Collapse of China. Mr. Chang, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Mike, and thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. So we have a ton to talk about here. We got about 10 minutes, so we'll solve all the world's problems right now. Real quick, the Three Gorges Dam. We had a guest on last week or so talking about what would happen if this thing really busted and the economic devastation it would cause and all that. What's that looking like, and what are the rains looking like in China and the flooding and all that stuff? Anything important for us to know?
The rains are still continuing, but I think most of them are pretty much over. Clearly, there's a problem at the dam. Beijing first said, look, there's no buckling at all, no distortion in the structure, but satellite images showed that it clearly was. Now, the dam will hold, but if it were to fail, then this would be devastation that we've never seen in humanity and history. And I think it would mean the end of the People's Republic. But I think the dam probably will be able to maintain its structural integrity because the rains are ending.
What a weak point in China's security, really, right? Wouldn't that dam be a target for militaries that wanted to take down China?
I'm sure Taiwan has thought about it, and I'm sure that we've thought about it as well, because what you're talking about is equivalent of a weapon of mass destruction, because you have major Chinese cities downstream from the dam. Also, even without a failure, this dam is actually causing problems for China, which it can't solve. This was a mistake to start out with. People in China knew it. But the premier at the time, Li Peng, absolutely insisted on it. And that shows the weakness of communist governance, that they go forward with a project of this sort, the biggest civil engineering project in history. And people knew that it was not going to work out well for Beijing.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you think the dam will hold, that's all we need to know for now. Pompeo, Secretary of State, sent out a tweet the other day talking about Huawei, which looks like Huawei for everyone else. Who doesn't speak Chinese like me and Mr. Chang? I don't speak Chinese, but it's pronounced Huawei. What do we need to know about Huawei? This is super important.
Yes, Huawei is the world's largest telecom equipment manufacturer, and it is providing the backbone for much of the world for 5G, the fifth generation of wireless communication. Now, this is important because 5G has super fast speeds, 2,000 times faster than existing 4G networks. This will allow the Internet of Things, which means that almost every device in the world will be connected to it. This allows China two things. First of all, to accumulate illicitly unprecedented amount of data, which will be fed into China's artificial intelligence system. But it also means that China may be able to manipulate the world's devices. So this could be, for instance, driving your self-driving car off the cliff and perhaps speeding up or stopping your pacemaker. So that's why 5G is important. That's why the United States is trying to make sure that countries do not include Huawei equipment in their 5G backbone.
Why would, let's just focus on America. Why would America want this technology? Are there no American companies that do this?
Yeah, we actually do not have a competitor to Huawei. We don't offer, and there's no American company offers a full spectrum package. Only Nokia and Ericsson do so. Now, U.S. companies are not out of 5G. So, for instance, Qualcomm, the San Diego-based chip maker, provides a lot of the guts inside of a 5G network. But really, we have let our telecom industry slip. Used to be American companies dominated telecom equipment manufacturing. We actually had the first cell phone call, and we shipped all of this off to China with really disadvantageous consequences.
Wow, that's amazing. How did China get so good at this and we didn't?
Well, first of all, Huawei stole a lot of technology, including from Cisco systems, but it's continuing to try to steal U.S. technology. And we have been very lackadaisical about that, especially the two previous administrations, George W. Bush's and Barack Obama's. So we let the Chinese do this. Beijing essentially does two things for Huawei. Gives them a lot of money, of course, a lot of subsidies, but also it uses its diplomatic corps to push Huawei equipment on countries. Huawei equipment is extremely cheap because China subsidizes it. And so, therefore, Huawei has made great advances. And indeed, in the U.S. telecom backbone, we've got Huawei equipment. Now, we're ripping it out, but that's a long, arduous process. Probably won't be completed for another 2 years. But nonetheless, this shows you that Huawei was able to make a lot of progress while we were not paying attention.
Wow. Okay, so I get your examples about, if they can control the Internet of Things, then they can control all of our devices and just the power, the leverage they would have over us. That makes a lot of sense to me. But to go to TikTok, I think this is a little harder for people to understand the problems with China knowing our data. What's the problem with that? Why does it matter? Right? To the average person walking around, why does it matter if China knows my TikTok usage?
Well, China illicitly surveils TikTok users. And so, for instance, they will know a lot about you because TikTok has the most powerful AI algorithm for this purpose. And they can store that information and use it for blackmail purposes, for instance, later on. And that's the general problem with TikTok and with surveillance in general. But also TikTok has something else. And that is it can manipulate American public opinion. And there are hints that Beijing has already done so in connection with the run-up to the November 3 election. TikTok has very powerful AI, as I mentioned. And just to give you an example, I've got a friend in Los Angeles. He has a friend. His son is a nerd. The nerdy son was never able to get more than 100 Instagram followers. But on TikTok, he got 26,000 followers in 2 weeks. And the reason is TikTok knows a lot about its users. It knows their likes and dislikes, their fears, their vulnerabilities, and they know that of everybody. So they can curate videos, send them to other people with the same likes and dislikes, fears and vulnerabilities. And so therefore it's very addictive. And that's why TikTok is dangerous. So for instance, people think that China curated the TikTok algorithm to fuel the George Floyd protests. We know that young Americans used TikTok to order seats for President Trump's Tulsa rally in June with no intention of taking them up. I think Beijing probably boosted the signal by curating those videos. In other words, sending those videos even further than they ordinarily would to hurt President Trump. So there's a lot of indications that TikTok is not just surveilling, but actually influencing American political opinion.
That makes perfect sense. Of course, why would they not? If they have that ability, why would they not? Oh, that's brilliant, Gordon. Thank you for that understanding. Okay, let's talk about the election. We've got a couple minutes. Who does China want to win the election? And what effect could the Chinese government have on the election? TikTok's one example, but what else could they do to influence how people vote?
Well, China has put out a lot of bots and trolls, and Twitter and Facebook and others have been taking down those Chinese troll farms. The New York Times reported that in mid-March, China sent out through social media feeds and text messages rumors that it knew to be false. These rumors were that President Trump was going to lock down the entire country because of the coronavirus epidemic. So Beijing has been trying to illicitly change opinion in the United States. As to which candidate Beijing wants, China watchers actually are in disagreement on that. I believe, though, that they want to unseat President Trump. You look at the trend of China's propaganda, which is open, and you can see that it is almost 100% against the incumbent. Also, we have seen other indications that Beijing is trying to unseat the president, as we've just talked about. I think that they actually like Biden for one reason, and that is every American president, regardless, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, pro-China, anti-China, always gives Beijing a one-year free pass in the first year. President Trump did it in 2017, trying to see if he could develop a cooperative relationship with Xi Jinping. He learned he couldn't, and so therefore we have the policies that we have today. But we cannot lose another minute, and we certainly can't lose a year as President Biden tries to get to a better place with Beijing in his mind. Also, the Democratic Party foreign policy establishment is very pro-engagement, the policies that haven't worked for 3 decades. And Vice President Biden, from his own comments, has indicated that he wants to engage China. He wants a cooperative relationship with China. I think that that's completely a fantasy. I think Beijing understands that. And as we've seen, it's been working for the vice president in this campaign.
Yeah. 60 seconds, Gordon. What is something you think the president has done a great job on being hard on China on? And what's something you think has left to be desired?
The great job would be Huawei and other Chinese telecom equipment manufacturers. He's recognized the threat. He's done something about it. He's also done something about intellectual property theft. The previous 2 presidents couldn't be bothered. And I think both Bush and Obama will be marked down by history for allowing China to just steal hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. IP each year. What the president should be doing, he should be using his powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to stop Google and other companies from trying to transfer important AI technology to China, because that's directly pipelined into the Chinese military. This is unjustifiable. The president should use his powers immediately to stop those technical cooperation arrangements.
Wow, so Google and these tech companies want to go into China because there's a lot of money to be made. And the suggestion is that China will take that technology and use it against us. Is that right?
Absolutely. For military purposes. Yeah. There's no question China's doing that.
Yeah, and of course they would and will continue. All right, let's do that next time. Gordon G. Chang, please follow on Twitter. The book is The Coming Collapse of China. So you obviously got to get that. And then Gordon G. Chang on Twitter. Mr. Chang, an honor, sir. Thank you so much.
An honor, Mr. Slater, and thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great stuff about Huawei and TikTok. Love that. Okay, lots more to go deeper on, and we'll do it. Let's take a break. We'll come back with Professor Vincent Racaniello. We'll talk about COVID. Spread the word. Slater Crusaders, it is Monday. That is Professor Vincent Racaniello Day here on the Mike Slater Show. He's the professor of virology at Columbia University, and he's got his own podcast. He's had it for a decade. TWIV, This Week in Virology, and you can check it out, microbe.tv. Professor, how do you do, sir?
I'm well, thank you. And you?
Good to talk to you. Got a lot of questions here as I go through the week. Anytime a COVID thing pops up, I always make note of it and try to stump you with it. So this is a study that had not been peer-reviewed, But I think the gist of it is that they think herd immunity can be met at 20%, 15 to 20%, and not the estimated 60%. Have you seen this one?
I have seen it, yes. And my
What do we think?
opinion is it is highly speculative. What they're looking at is some cross protection from the seasonal coronaviruses that infect all of us every year, give us mild colds. They're thinking that might give us some cross protection so we don't need as much immunity to actually SARS-CoV-2. But I don't think that's right. I don't think there's any evidence for that. And I saw that this past week. I don't think 20% is going to be enough. Sorry.
Okay. It ties into a podcast you had, and I didn't get to watch this one, but it talked about, in the caption, it said, what the end of this virus is. So if 15 to 20% doesn't cut it, and did that study look at places where they do have 15 to 20% immunity right now and kind of made some conclusions based off that?
Yeah, they made some extensions. New York City has about 20%. And the infection rates are very low right now, but it's not zero. There's still infections in New York City. And I suspect that when schools open, pretty soon, we're going to see an uptick. But let's see. I just think 20% is too low. I had an epidemiologist on TWIV last Wednesday, and he said 70% is what he is still predicting.
Okay. How does it end? What's the thoughts?
How does the pandemic end? You either get one or more vaccines that can protect you, or the virus infects nearly everybody on the planet, right? 7 billion people. And a lot of people will die, and then they get immunity. Yeah.
Okay, that's still it. Every day still, I see something about Sweden, right? And Sweden could be whatever you want it to be, right? Sweden, and that's kind of always the case with Sweden. They're either like the socialist paradise or, horrible, whatever. So how do we think of Sweden? What are we supposed to know about Sweden and what they've done and how it's working, et cetera?
Yeah, so you get mixed messages from Sweden. Some people say they've done nothing, right? And the virus is just ripping through. Other people said they clearly have done something. And I think it's in between, right? They have done less than many other countries. However, I have friends in Sweden, and I've been talking to them. And they said, of course we're wearing masks. Of course we're physical distancing. Things are closed. Not everything is open. Schools have been closed over the summer. So there have been some restriction of interactions for sure. And they've had a lot of infections, and they're still not at herd immunity. So I would be very careful, reading in the news about Sweden, because there are some people that like to exaggerate there, in my opinion.
Yeah, either way. I think it can be exaggerated either way. So I almost have to, unfortunately, I have to dismiss Sweden completely, right? No matter what anyone's saying about it, because I can't know for sure. And that's a bummer. All right, what do you think about this? I know this is your favorite topic when it comes to this virus. This is virologist Jonathan Latham and some molecular biologist. They said they're at the Bioscience Research Project in Ithaca. Is that connected with Cornell? Do you know? I wonder if it is. Something about let me just read this. Arrived at their finding after translating a 66-page master's thesis from the Chinese medical doctor who treated miners back in 2012, miners, like people who mine things, and sent their tissue samples to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So is the argument here that this virus was around in 2012 and therefore escaped from the lab?
No, well, if they're making that argument, they're wrong. What we do know, remember, in bats in China, there are SARS-like coronaviruses all the time, and they've been there since before humans were on Earth, probably. And they periodically, if you're in the countryside and a bat flies over you and poops on you, you can get infected, right? And we know this happens because they have taken serum from farmers in the country, and a few of them have antibodies to these viruses and they don't get sick. So people have always been infected with these viruses. But this one, SARS-CoV-2, is very special. It's different. It's not the same as any virus spreading in bats. So no one's got infected with this one virus before. Clear. It's very clear. No one has.
Well, so what's this? What are these miners? What are these miners back in 2012? Did they get infected with SARS-CoV-2, or was it different?
Oh, no, they didn't. They got infected with something related, an ancestor of SARS-CoV-2, right? Something distantly related. But remember, it's a SARS-like coronavirus. There are lots of them in bats, and they're related, but they're not the same virus. So you can't say they got infected with SARS-CoV-2 because that virus really only emerged November-ish 2019. And that's the one that's circulating now. So no, they weren't infected with it. They were infected with a relative, let's say, of the virus we have.
What do you think, Professor, when you... Because I feel like I'm just like throwing up these conspiracy theories. You're just like batting them all the time. What do you think when you see these people? I mean, these are virologists. These are, educated people who are trying to connect dots and maybe are taking too many leaps in the process.
Right. So let me just say that just because you're a virologist doesn't mean you're going to get everything right. And depends how much, virologists can be very specialized. So these people are not working on coronaviruses. They're not thinking about them. And so they can get things wrong. All right. You have to listen. You have to decide who to listen to. And so it's very difficult because I think even if you have a Nobel Prize or if you've been an academic for 40 years, people assume you know what you're talking about, but it's not always the case. You can get it wrong. Okay. But you should listen to TWIV because we think about things.
We're
always thinking.
Always get it right.
No, not true. But we're thinking very carefully about things. We don't want to mislead people.
Yeah. And what about this human instinct? I'm sure you see it in the science field all the time of wanting to connect dots, wanting to make conclusions quickly.
Oh, yes, absolutely. People want explanations, right? We all do. And especially this is something new and pretty scary. People want explanations. So they reach out for anything and without thinking a bit about it. There's nothing better than thinking really carefully about something and looking at our experience. What do we know related to this? And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to rush to conclusions, and that's what happens. And you said at the top of the show, I've been podcasting for a decade. I mean, that should give some cred, right? I've been thinking deeply about things and my co-hosts about something for a long time. So that's different from most people who want to just come to a quick conclusion, I think.
That's right. Read some articles about masks and how masks made out of certain materials don't work as well as other materials, and I think that makes a lot of sense, right? But I heard some things that like a bandana or something it's even worse than nothing because it breaks down the particles or something and makes them. Have you heard this? What's the science behind this?
Right. So this is a study, I think, out of Duke where they took a laser and they could see droplets floating in the air. So they decided to try different mask materials to see how they pushed the droplets around. So if my reaction was last week, I don't care about a laser and droplets that you can see with a laser. I want to know which droplet has virus in it, okay? It may be different from the ones you're seeing with your fancy laser, and they didn't do that. So I don't really think that means anything, that study. I don't think it means a darn thing. I want to know where the virus is in these droplets, and they didn't show that, okay? So wear your bandana.
What droplets would or wouldn't have virus in them?
Well, we know that the bigger when you talk, when you sneeze and cough, you expel a whole range of droplet sizes from really big ones that fall right to the ground, intermediate size, a few feet, and then really fine ones that can go many, many yards, right? And we think most of the SARS-CoV-2 is in the middle-sized droplets. That's why we say stay 6 feet away from other people, roughly. All right? Those are the ones I care about. And they didn't specifically look at those in this study. So I really don't think that study means anything at all. And I wish it hadn't even been published because it's making people go crazy. And just wear your masks, folks. Any mask is better than nothing.
Yes, I think their argument, I shouldn't even say, some people may interpret the argument as, a bandana may break up the particles so they're smaller, and then those spread further, therefore it's worse. But you're saying, well, they may be smaller, but maybe they don't have the virus in them anymore.
Yeah, I think that these little droplets don't have virus because they're too small and they don't have you need a lot of virus to get infected. And so the little ones don't have enough. So I don't care if the bandana is breaking it up. It doesn't matter. You're not going to get infected, right?
Oh, good to know. Ow, Professor. Well, I know you had some thoughts a couple weeks ago about China and their vaccine, and now it looks like Russia has a vaccine. Would you take that one?
No, the Russian vaccine hasn't been tested. It's only been like 2 months, and they can't possibly have put it in enough people. I think I read that they've put it in 75 people, and that's really not enough. We're testing ours in 30,000 people at the moment, so I would not take the Russian vaccine, no.
Okay. Professor, we got to go. Do you have any other parting thought for us that's on your mind?
I think school opening is on everybody's mind, and I spoke to some people this week who said the best thing schools can do is reduce class size under 50%. That does more than anything at reducing transmission. halve the class size. And they said, send 5 kids to school for 5 days, half of the school for 5 days, then the next week, the other half. That would do a lot. As long as transmission is low, that's a really good way to get back to school. I like that.
Maybe next week we could talk about school. I know last week we did all HCQ. Maybe this next week we can do all school. We can kind of break that down. I know you've been talking a lot about that in your podcast too. TWIV, This Week in Virology, and then microbe.tv, the professor out of Manhattan, I think, or some inside joke. No, we'll tell the story another day. We're out of time. We'll do another. Professor, appreciate you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Have a great rest of your day. Yeah, we'll see you on Monday. TWIV, and microbe.tv, microbe.tv. All right, that's our show. True story. Mike Slater. We'll see you tomorrow. Spread the word.